Subscribe now, because what you're about to read will restore your faith in honesty and prove that integrity is worth more than gold. A struggling college student working 3 jobs to survive. A billionaire CEO who tests people in the most unexpected ways. And one lost wallet containing enough money to change her life forever, if she keeps it. But what she does next will shock you, move you, and show you that sometimes the universe rewards those who do the right thing, even when no one is watching. This story has a twist so beautiful, an ending so perfect, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Don't miss a single word. Danielle Cooper woke before sunrise. Her tiny room in the attic of an old brownstone on Beacon Street in Boston was drowning in semi-darkness. The apartment was cramped but neat, everything she could afford with her income. 23 years old, 2 majors, 3 part-time jobs. This was her everyday life. She looked through the window. The October. Morning greeted her with cold and delicate raindrops hitting the glass. Boston was waking slowly, and its historic buildings were emerging from the mist, rising from the Charles River. Danielle loved this city. Despite the difficulties she struggled with here, every day she fought for a better future, saving every penny for tuition. She sighed, noticing the time on her old alarm clock. Late again. She had to hurry. In an hour, she was starting her first shift at Angel's Cafe on Newbury Street. And then classes were waiting for her at Boston University, followed by evening work at a bookstore. Dressed in a simple but neat outfit, black pants, white blouse, and gray sweater, she ran out of the apartment. Several minutes later, she was already walking through the wet streets of Back Bay, shiny from rain. Despite being in a hurry, she stopped for a moment near Trinity Church to listen to the bells. This little ritual gave her a sense of stability in her chaotic life. Angel's Cafe was a cozy place that attracted both tourists and local residents. Danielle liked working there, although the boss was demanding and tips weren't always sufficient. "Good morning, Mrs. Henderson," she greeted the owner, an older woman with gray hair and an always smiling face. "Danielle, good that you're here," Mrs. Henderson said, handing her an apron. "We have a business breakfast reservation today. Some important people from New York." The morning shift passed in the blink of an eye. Danielle served subsequent customers, smiling even though she felt exhausted. When it was time to serve the reserved table, she noticed an elegantly dressed man accompanied by 2 people. He looked to be in his mid-30s. He had dark hair, an impeccably tailored suit, and a penetrating gaze. "Good morning. My name is Danielle, and I'll be serving you today," she said in a professional tone while handing out menus. The man looked at her, and for a moment their eyes met. Danielle felt a strange flutter in her heart, but she quickly looked away, focusing on work. "We'll have 3 coffees, please. 1 black, 2 with cream, and your selection of pastries," the man said in a voice that seemed oddly familiar, though she was sure she'd never met him before. "Of course. I'll bring them right away," she replied, and walked to the counter. During service, Danielle caught the man looking at her several times. There was nothing unpleasant about it, rather curiosity. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw him, talking to his companions, occasionally glancing in her direction. When she came with the bill, the man smiled at her. "Thank you for your excellent service," he said, handing her a payment card. Danielle noticed the name on the card, Miles Patterson. It didn't mean anything to her, but the way his companions treated him with respect suggested he must be someone important. When the guests left, Danielle found a tip on the table, $200. It was a huge sum for her. "Who was that?" she asked Mrs. Henderson, showing the bills. "Don't you know? That's Miles Patterson, one of the richest people in America. He owns TechNext, a technology company, apparently worth several $billion," the owner explained, arranging cups on a shelf. Danielle shook her head in disbelief. She'd never been interested in business or rich people. Her world was limited to study and work. After her shift ended, she hurried to the university. The day was filled with lectures in economics and English, literature, 2 majors she was combining in hope of a better future. In the evening, when exhausted she was heading to her 3rd job at Word's bookstore, the rain had turned into a downpour. Soaked to the skin, she arrived at the place. Mr. Peterson, the bookstore owner, greeted her with concern. "Danielle, you look like a drowned rat. Go to the back. I have an extra sweater there." Grateful for his concern, Danielle changed and took her seat at the cash register. The bookstore was her favorite workplace. Surrounded by books, she felt almost at home. That evening, customers were few. The weather effectively discouraged people from going out. As closing time approached, the bookstore door opened and, to her surprise, the same man she'd served at the cafe that morning entered. Miles Patterson, now without the suit, in a plain raincoat with raindrops on his hair, looked less formal but equally handsome. "Good evening," he said, recognizing her. "What an interesting coincidence." "Good evening," she replied, feeling strange nervousness. "How can I help you?" "I'm looking for something about Boston's history. I'm just passing through and I'd like to get to know the city better." Danielle led him to the appropriate shelf, showing several titles. She noticed the man wasn't looking at the books so much as at her. "Do you work in 2 places?" he finally asked. "3, actually," she answered honestly. "I'm studying 2 majors, so I need money for tuition and living expenses." Miles, then, nodded with approval. "That's admirable. Most young people your age are looking for easier paths." Danielle smiled slightly. "I don't believe in easy paths, Mr. Patterson." The man raised his eyebrows, surprised that she knew his surname. "I saw your card at the cafe," she explained. Miles chose 2 books and went to the register. When Danielle was packing them into a bag, she noticed the man took out his wallet, but instead of paying, he placed it on the counter and started looking for something in his pockets. "Sorry, I have to answer this call," he said suddenly when his cell phone rang. "I'll be right back." He left the bookstore, talking on the phone, and Danielle stayed with his wallet on the counter. She opened it to check if there was an ID with an address, in case the man didn't come back. In the wallet, she found several credit cards, a photo of an older woman, probably his mother, and several thick stacks of $100 bills. She waited 15 minutes, but Miles didn't return. Mr. Peterson glanced at his watch. "We have to close, Danielle. This customer left his wallet." She showed him the find. "Leave it in the drawer. Maybe he'll come back tomorrow," the owner suggested. Danielle shook her head. "I can't. There's a lot of money and cards here. What if he needs them?" She put the wallet in her bag. "I'll check online where to find him. This is Miles Patterson, apparently a famous person." After leaving the bookstore, instead of going home, Danielle stopped at a cafe with Wi-Fi. A few minutes of searching was enough to find information about TechNext and its owner. The website provided the headquarters address in New York, but current news showed that Miles Patterson was staying at the Four Seasons Hotel in Boston for a business conference. Despite being tired and it being late at night, Danielle decided to go to the hotel. She got on the subway, feeling the weight of the wallet in her. She could keep this money. It would be enough to pay tuition for the entire semester. Nobody would find out. But she didn't consider it even for a moment. The Four Seasons was one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. Danielle, in her simple clothes, felt uncomfortable crossing the threshold of the elegant lobby. She approached the front desk. "Excuse me, I'd like to leave something for Mr. Miles Patterson," she told the receptionist. The man in uniform looked at her. "Mr. Patterson doesn't receive unannounced guests." "I'm not a guest," Danielle explained. "I found his wallet and wanted to return it." The receptionist looked at her suspiciously for a moment, then reached for the phone. "One moment. I'll check if Mr. Patterson is available." To her surprise, after a short conversation, the receptionist hung up and said, "Mr. Patterson asks that you go to the hotel bar. He'll be there in 5 minutes." The hotel bar was equally elegant as the rest of the hotel. Danielle sat on the edge of a chair, feeling out of place. After a few minutes, Miles Patterson appeared, no longer wearing a coat, but a simple white shirt and dark pants. "Ms. Danielle," he greeted her with a smile. "I didn't expect you'd bring my wallet in person so late at night." Danielle handed him the wallet. "I thought you might need your cards and documents, and there's a lot of money inside." Miles sat across from her and opened the wallet, checking the contents. "Everything's here," he said with approval. "Thank you. Not everyone would be so honest." "It's nothing," she replied, standing up. "I should go now. It's late. Please, stay for a moment." He stopped her with a gesture. "Let me buy you a drink or coffee." Danielle hesitated, but tiredness and wet clothes made the offer of hot coffee tempting. "Okay, coffee would be nice. Thank you." Miles ordered 2 coffees and cake. "I have to admit I'm impressed," he said as the waiter left. 3 jobs, 2 majors, and you still find time to personally return a wallet to a stranger. Danielle, felt her cheeks grow warm. Really, it wasn't a big deal. For me it was, he replied seriously, and I'd like to reward you for it. No need, she protested strongly. I didn't do it for a reward. Miles looked at her for a moment with curiosity. I know, and that's what's so extraordinary. They sat in the hotel bar until midnight. Miles turned out to be surprisingly normal for a billionaire. He listened carefully and asked questions about her studies, dreams, everyday struggles. He also told a little about himself, about the beginnings of his company, about the failures that preceded success, about the loneliness that often accompanies people at the top of their careers. When Danielle finally left the hotel and made her way home on the subway, she felt strangely energized despite the exhaustion. Something about that conversation had felt different, real, genuine, unguarded. The next morning greeted her with piercing cold. The heating in the old building had failed again. Danielle wrapped herself in an extra sweater and looked at her watch. She was supposed to start her morning shift at the cafe in 15 minutes. She didn't even have time for a cup of tea. When she arrived, Mrs. Henderson greeted her with a mysterious smile. Danielle, someone left something for you last night, she said, handing her an elegant envelope. Danielle opened it with surprise. Inside, she found a handwritten note. Thank you for last night and your honesty. It was nice to meet someone who works hard for their goals. If you'd like to continue our conversation, please call Miles Patterson. Underneath was a phone number and an attached gift card to the largest bookstore in Boston for $1,000. What's this, a secret admirer? Mrs. Henderson asked, seeing the blush on the girl's face. It's not like that, Danielle denied quickly. It's just a customer whose lost wallet I returned. The day passed with her thinking about yesterday's meeting. She couldn't understand why. A man of his stature would be interested in an ordinary student. Or maybe it was just politeness. The gift card was a nice gesture, but what next? She considered calling but finally postponed the decision for later. After work, she went straight to university. At the economics lecture, the professor discussed the impact of new technology on the labor market. He mentioned TechNext as an example of innovative business approach. Miles Patterson started as a young man with a startup in a garage, and today his company is worth billions and employs over 2,000 people, the professor said. But what's interesting is that he's known for personally interviewing potential candidates for senior positions, often in unusual ways, to test their honesty and professional ethics. Danielle froze, remembering the strange circumstances of their meetings. Was it possible that leaving the wallet was deliberate? Had it been some kind of test? After class, instead of going to the bookstore, she called Mr. Peterson, asking for the evening off for personal reasons. She took her first day off in months. She needed time to think through the situation. Sitting in a small cafe near the university, she took out her phone and, after long hesitation, dialed the number from the card. Miles picked up after 3 rings. Patterson speaking. Good morning, this is Danielle Cooper, she said, feeling her heart beat harder. I'm calling to thank you for the gift card, but I can't accept it. There was a short silence on the other end. I see. Maybe we can discuss it over dinner. I'm still in Boston until tomorrow. Danielle hesitated. Dinner with a billionaire. It sounded like a scene from a movie, not from her life. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please don't be afraid. His voice was calm, businesslike. It's just a business conversation. I have a proposition for you that might interest you. A business proposition? Curiosity won. All right then. Where and what time? 8 p.m. At Bistro du Jour. I know the owner. We'll have a quiet table. Bistro du Jour was one of the most exclusive restaurants in Boston. Danielle had never been there. She couldn't even afford an appetizer at such a place. Before leaving her apartment, she wondered for a long time what to wear. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of practical, simple clothes. Finally, she decided on the only dress she had, navy blue with a delicate pattern, bought on sale 2 years ago. When she arrived at the restaurant, she felt nervous. The maitre d' greeted her at the entrance. Miss Danielle Cooper? Mr. Patterson is waiting in the garden room. He led her to a secluded table in an elegant room by a fireplace. Miles was already sitting. He stood when he saw her and politely greeted her, pulling out her chair. I'm glad you came, he said as they sat down. I'm curious about your proposal, Danielle replied, trying to sound confident. Before we get down to business, let's order something. The chef I prepared a special menu today. Dinner was the best meal Danielle had eaten in months. Exquisite dishes with names she sometimes couldn't even pronounce. Subtle wine, just one glass because she still had to take the subway home, and conversation that flowed surprisingly naturally. Miles asked questions about her studies, about her plans for the future, about what she was passionate about in economics and literature. Only at dessert did he get down to specifics. Ms. Danielle, the wallet you found wasn't a coincidence. Danielle put down her spoon. I heard during the lecture that you test potential employees this way. Miles smiled slightly. So you know what I'm getting at. I need honest, hard-working, intelligent people in my company. Those who aren't looking for shortcuts. You passed that test perfectly. But I have no experience in the technology industry, Danielle noted. That's not a problem. Our company has many departments. With your economics education, you could work in finance or marketing. And beyond that, he added, looking into her eyes, we need someone who thinks differently. Someone who knows the value of hard work and ethics. Danielle felt dizzy, and it wasn't just from the wine. What exactly are you proposing? An internship at our company. 6 months. Salary sufficient so you don't have to work 3 jobs at once. A corporate apartment in New York. And after the internship, if everything goes well, permanent employment. Danielle was silent, trying to grasp the scale of this proposal. Why me? There are so many talented students. Intuition, Miles replied. Years in business have taught me to recognize potential. Besides, he added with a smile, few people would return a wallet with so much money inside. I'd have to transfer my studies to New York. We can arrange that. Our company cooperates with universities. Or you could finish this year in Boston, commuting to New York on weekends, and make the transfer permanent from the new due academic year. The offer was tempting. No more worrying about rent, about paying for studies, about whether there'd be enough for food until the end of the month. But at the same time, Danielle felt anxious. What if I don't prove myself? Miles looked at her attentively. That's a fair question. If you don't do well, we'll simply end the cooperation without any negative consequences. But I have a feeling you'll do excellently. Danielle needed time to think this over. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but it also meant huge changes. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Please reply by the end of the week. When dinner was over, Miles offered to drive her home in his car. You really don't have to, she protested. I can take the subway. It's late. Please let me ensure your safety. The black Mercedes stopped in front of the old brownstone where Danielle lived. She felt strange showing the Billionaire her humble neighborhood. Thank you for dinner. And the proposal, she said, getting out. I'm waiting for your decision, Miles replied. And remember, this offer isn't charity, it's business. I see potential in you that I want to use in my company. Danielle nodded and watched the car drive away into the rainy night. Climbing the stairs to her apartment, she felt like she was in a dream. Had she really just received a job offer from one of the richest people in the country? She spent the next days weighing pros and cons. She talked to Bai, Mrs. Henderson, to Mr. Peterson, even to her parents who lived in a small town in Vermont. Everyone said the same thing. This is an opportunity you can't waste. On Thursday, 3 days after dinner, she called Miles. I accept your proposal, she said decisively. Excellent. She could hear satisfaction in his voice. Then I invite you to visit our headquarters in New York next week. All details will be sent by email. When she hung up, she felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Her life was completely changing, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The chapter ends with Danielle packing her modest belongings, preparing for the trip to New York. On her desk lies a letter from Miles with a first-class train ticket, the address of a luxury apartment that will be her new home, and a first payment in advance, an amount she'd never had in her account in her life. Everything seems too good to be true, and Danielle can't shake the feeling that there must be a catch somewhere. Continuing in next response due to length. Story is approximately 60% complete. Remaining sections include her arrival in New York, sabotage by jealous colleague Agatha Wilson, vindication when Miles discovers the truth, romantic development, proposal, foundation creation, and epilogue showing their life 1 year later, with the framed wallet displayed as symbol of their story. New York welcomed Danielle with cold, gusty wind and rain. The first days in the new city were like a dream for her. The luxurious apartment in a modern skyscraper in Tribeca with a view of the Hudson River and downtown Manhattan was larger than her entire Boston apartment. Kitchen equipped with the most modern appliances, bathroom with whirlpool, walk-in closet bigger than her old room. All of this seemed unreal. TechNext headquarters was located in an impressive glass building in the financial district. When Danielle crossed its threshold on the first day, she felt intimidated. The receptionist greeted her with a professional smile. "Ms. Danielle Cooper? Mr. Patterson mentioned you'd be coming today. Agatha Wilson, head of HR, is already waiting for you." Agatha turned out to be a 40-something elegant woman with a piercing gaze and cool smile. "So you're Miles's protege," she said, measuring Danielle with her eyes. "He rarely personally engages in recruitment." Danielle detected a note of resentment in her voice. "I'm here for an internship," she replied modestly. "I hope I can learn a lot." Agatha walked her through all the formalities, showed her the office, and introduced her to the financial department team where Danielle would work. Her immediate supervisor was Thomas Wright, a serious man in his 50s who led financial analyses. "Mr. Patterson personally assigned you to my team," Thomas said, shaking her hand. "I hope you won't disappoint his trust." The first week of work was overwhelming for Danielle. The pace, complexity of tasks, expectations, everything was on a different level than anything she'd dealt with before. In the evenings, she returned to the apartment exhausted, often too tired even to prepare dinner. She ordered takeout and fell asleep on the couch in front of the TV. She didn't see Miles Patterson at all. Apparently he was on a business trip abroad. Some employees treated her with reserve. There were rumors she'd gotten the job only through personal connections. Others were kind and helpful, especially Carolyn, a young analyst who occupied the desk next to hers. "Don't worry about Agatha," Caroline said during lunch together in the company cafeteria. "She's jealous. She's been trying to get Miles's attention for years, and he treats her only as an employee." "There's nothing personal between me and Mr. Patterson," Danielle assured her, blushing. Caroline smiled significantly. "Not yet," she winked. "But that doesn't change the fact that Agatha will throw obstacles in your path. Watch out for her." In the second week, Thomas assigned Danielle her first serious task, financial analysis of a potential business partner, a small technology company from Seattle that TechNext was considering acquiring. She was supposed to prepare a report by Friday for a board meeting. Danielle threw herself into work with enthusiasm. She spent long hours analyzing data, searching for patterns, irregularities, hidden problems. She felt this was her chance to prove her worth. On Thursday afternoon, when she'd finished the report, Agatha appeared at her desk. "How's progress?" she asked, leaning against the edge of the desk. "I'm just finishing," Danielle replied, without looking away from the monitor. "I found some interesting things." "Great. I need it by 6 p.m. today. I'll present your report to the board." Danielle looked at her surprised. "But Mr. Wright said I was to present it in person tomorrow." Agatha smiled coldly. "Plans have changed. Miles is returning tonight and wants to discuss this matter right away. And as a new employee, you don't yet have permission to participate in such meetings." Danielle hesitated. Something didn't feel right here, but she didn't want to question the decisions of the HR department head. "I'll have everything ready by 6 p.m., she agreed. When Agatha left, Danielle called Thomas, who was at a meeting outside the company. He didn't answer. She sent him a message asking about the change of plans, but received no response. At 5:30 p.m., she finished her report. She checked all data and results once more. Her analysis showed that the company from Seattle, despite promising technology, had serious financial and legal problems that could constitute too much risk for TechNext. It was a recommendation opposite to what had been initially suggested. She sent the report to Agatha and shut down her computer. She felt mild anxiety but tried to ignore it. After all, she'd done her job as best she could. The next day, Thomas called her to his office. His face was serious, tense. "What happened with your report, Ms. Danielle?" he asked as soon as she closed the door. "I prepared it according to your instructions," she replied, feeling growing anxiety. "Ms. Wilson said plans had changed and she'd present it to the board." Thomas frowned. "I didn't receive any report. The board got a presentation prepared by Agatha, which recommended acquiring this company. And this morning we received information about serious criminal investigations against the owners of this enterprise." Miles is furious. Danielle felt blood drain from her face. But I sent the report, and I clearly advised against the acquisition precisely because of the financial and legal problems I found. Thomas sighed heavily. I checked your email. There's no email sent yesterday to Agatha or anyone on the board. That's impossible, Danielle protested. I sent it at 5:30 p.m. Thomas looked at her in silence for a moment, then pointed to a chair. Please sit down. I'm afraid your position in the company is now at risk. Miles hired you personally, so the decision belongs to him. But this is a very serious situation. Danielle felt her eyes fill with tears. She couldn't believe this was happening. She returned to her desk as if in a fog. Caroline looked at her with compassion. I heard, she whispered. Agatha is vile, but don't worry. The truth always comes to light. Around noon, Danielle received a message that Miles Patterson wanted to see her. With her heart beating wildly, she went, to the top floor where his office was located. Miles sat behind a large glass desk. He looked tired and disappointed. Please sit down, Ms. Danielle, he said in an official tone, so different from how he'd talked to her in Boston. Mr. Patterson, I really did prepare that report and sent it, she started before he could say anything. Miles raised his hand, stopping her words. You're not here to be accused, he said calmly. I want to hear your version of events. Danielle told everything. About working on the report, about Agatha's unexpected visit, about the sent email. I have a copy of the report on my computer, she added. I can show you. Please do that, Miles agreed. But not now. Please send a copy to my assistant. We'll investigate this matter. He looked at her carefully, as if trying to read her thoughts. Why did you do it? He suddenly asked. What do you mean? You came to an unknown city, took a job at a huge corporation, exposing yourself to stress and pressure. You could have stayed in Boston, continued your life there. Danielle thought for a moment. Because it was a chance for a better life, for development, for doing something important, and I always fight for my chances. Miles was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. I see. Please return to work. We'll explain the situation. When she left his office, she didn't feel much better. Did he believe her? Would she be fired? Would she have to return to Boston, to 3 jobs, and living paycheck to paycheck? Late that afternoon, Miles's assistant approached her desk. Mr. Patterson asks you to stay after work. He wants to meet you at 7 p.m. in the conference room on the 2nd floor. Danielle spent the rest of the day in suspense. She couldn't concentrate on work. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Agatha walking down the hall several times, glancing in her direction with a triumphant smile. At 7 p.m., when most employees had already left, Danielle went to the indicated conference room. She found Miles there, along with Thomas and Caroline, who smiled at her friendly. Please sit down, Ms. Danielle, Miles said. We have an interesting situation. Danielle sat, feeling her hands shake. We checked your computer, Miles continued. Indeed, the report was created and, according to the logs, sent at 5:30 p.m., but it never reached the recipient. Someone remotely accessed your account and deleted the message. Danielle held her breath. How is that possible? Our company has advanced security systems, Thomas replied. All such activities leave traces. We know which computer this operation was performed from. From Ms. Wilson's computer, Caroline added. And as it turns out, she has a personal interest in acquiring this company from Seattle. Her brother is one of the shareholders. Miles looked into Danielle's eyes. I want you to know that we value honesty, integrity, and competence in this company. Your report was accurate, professional, and saved us from a serious mistake. Ms. Wilson will be fired, and you'll receive an official apology and promotion. Danielle couldn't believe her ears. But I've only been here 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, you've proven your value, Miles said with a smile. You'll take the position of junior analyst on Monday, with an appropriate raise, of course. When she left the conference room, she felt like she was in a trance. She'd gone from fear of dismissal to promotion in 1 day. Caroline was waiting for her in the corridor. I knew it would happen, she said, hugging her. Miles always draws the right conclusions. And Agatha, well, she got what she deserved. In the evening, when Danielle was returning to her apartment, her phone rang. The number was withheld. Hello? She answered uncertainly. Ms. Danielle, this is Miles Patterson, she heard the familiar voice. I'm sorry for the confusion today. I wanted to ask if you'd like to have dinner with me this weekend. Unofficially, not as boss and employee, but as friends. Danielle stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. Her heart was beating like crazy. With pleasure, she replied after a moment. Excellent. See you Saturday then. And congratulations once again. I knew you'd do well. When she hung up, a smile appeared on her face. Maybe New York wasn't so bad after all. Maybe this opportunity that had fallen to her so unexpectedly would really change her life. Saturday evening was exceptionally beautiful for November in New York. The sky lit up with stars, and the cool air smelled of autumn. Danielle stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, looking at her reflection. She'd bought a new dress. Burgundy, elegant, but not too formal. For the first time since arriving in New York, she'd spent more money on herself. The first payment. She'd sent almost the entire amount to her parents to repay part of the loan they'd taken out for her studies. At exactly 7 p.m., the intercom rang. Miles was waiting in front of the building, not in his business Mercedes, but in a private sports car, an Audi. "You look beautiful," he said when she got in the car. "Thank you," she replied, feeling her cheeks color. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise," he smiled mysteriously, "but I think you'll like it." They drove through the city, passing illuminated streets, elegant shops, restaurants full of people. New York was full of life. Danielle still couldn't believe she was now part of this world, had a prestigious job, lived in a luxury apartment, and one of the richest people in the country was taking her to dinner. To her surprise, Miles didn't stop at any of the exclusive restaurants in Manhattan, but drove to Brooklyn. They stopped in front of a small, cozy place in an old brownstone surrounded by a garden. "This is my friend's restaurant," Miles explained, opening the door for her. "The best place when you want to talk without distractions and curious looks." Inside, there was pleasant twilight, candles on tables, quiet music in the background, just a few occupied tables. The owner, an older man with gray hair, greeted Miles with a hug. "You've been gone too long," he said with reproach. "Anthony, meet Danielle Cooper," Miles introduced her. "The woman who saved my company from a serious mistake." Anthony kissed her hand with respect. "Then tonight's dinner is on the house." He smiled warmly. "I'll prepare something special." He led them to a secluded table in a small alcove where they had privacy but could still observe the garden through a large window. Miles ordered wine, and Anthony promised to surprise them with a tasting menu. "Now we can finally talk," Miles said when they were alone. "How are you feeling after all these events?" Danielle thought for a moment. "Honestly, a bit like I'm in a movie. Everything is happening so fast, so intensely. Sometimes I wonder if this isn't all some strange dream." Miles nodded in understanding. "I understand that feeling. When I founded TechNext, I couldn't believe how quickly everything changed either. Day by day, I was becoming a different person, living in a different world. But you earned it," Danielle noted. "You did too. It wasn't just about finding a wallet," Miles said. He looked at her intently, as if trying to guess her thoughts. "Can I ask what you would have done with that money if you'd kept it?" Danielle looked him straight in the eye. "I would have paid college tuition, repaid part of my parents' loan, and maybe I would have bought myself new shoes. The ones I had were leaking." They sat in silence for a while, broken only by the sounds of cutlery and hushed conversations from other tables. "I know this will sound strange," Miles started after a while, "but I'm glad fate put you in my path. Not just because of the company." Danielle felt her heart speed up. Was he implying what she thought? "Mr. Patterson." "Miles," he interrupted. "Today I'm just Miles." "Miles," she repeated, tasting the name. "I'm also happy fate connected us. But I need to know, was the wallet really a test? Was everything planned?" Miles looked at her silently for a while, then sighed slightly. "Yes and no. At first it was an accident. I really left my wallet absent-mindedly while talking on the phone. But when I realized what happened and returned to the bookstore, Mr. Peterson told me you'd taken it to return it personally. That made me so curious that I decided to wait and see what you'd do." Danielle felt relief wash over her. So not everything was a planned game. "And why did you even notice me in the cafe at the beginning? I'm sure plenty of people serve you every day." Miles smiled slightly. I noticed you because despite being exhausted, and it was obvious you were, you smiled sincerely at every customer, and you had an economics book hidden under the counter that you read during breaks. That intrigued me. Dinner passed with conversations about work, the past, about, dreams. Danielle learned that Miles came from a small town in upstate New York, lost his father as a teenager, and had to earn money for his own life, that his first company went bankrupt, and he lost all his savings. TechNext was his third venture. People only see success, he said, finishing his story. They don't see years of struggle, failures, moments of doubt. They think I was born rich or had amazing luck. What's your biggest dream? Danielle asked, feeling increasingly comfortable in his company. Miles thought for a moment. I want to create a foundation that will support talented young people from small towns, like I once was, like you. Give them chances they don't have. Because in America, there are thousands of talented young people who will never develop their potential because they were born in the wrong place, in the wrong family. That's a noble dream, she said appreciatively. And what about you? What are you dreaming of? Danielle hesitated. This will sound trivial after what you said, but I'd like to be financially independent in life, not worry about tomorrow, be able to help my parents, maybe someday start my own company. It's not trivial, Miles denied. That's the foundation of everything else. When they finished dinner, he suggested a walk. The night was cold but pleasant. They walked through a park, talking about everything and nothing. Danielle couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at ease in someone's company. Can I ask a personal question? She asked at one point. Of course. Why is someone like you alone? I haven't seen any mentions of a fiancé or wife. Miles smiled sadly. I was engaged several years ago, but my fiancé turned out to love my money more than me. We parted under quite painful circumstances. I'm sorry, Danielle said honestly. Since then, it's been hard for me to trust people. That's why I value honesty and integrity so much. He looked at her significantly. And that's why you intrigued me so much. Danielle, in a world where everyone is looking to gain something, you just did what you thought was right. They stopped by a fountain. The light from lanterns reflected in the water, creating a magical spectacle of shadows and lights. Danielle felt Miles gently touch her hand. I didn't invite you today only as your boss or friend, he said quietly. I feel there's something more between us, and I want to explore this, if you'll allow me. Danielle looked into his eyes, seeing in them sincerity and warmth. For a moment she hesitated. The age difference, the difference in status, the fact that he was her boss. But at the same time, she felt this wasn't about money or position. There was something authentic between them. I feel it too, she replied quietly. Miles gently took her face in his hands and kissed her. In that kiss was everything. Tenderness, respect, hope. When they returned to the car, Danielle felt like she was in a trance. Everything had happened so fast, yet it seemed so natural. I want you to know, Miles said when they stopped under her apartment building, that what's between us has nothing to do with work. I'll still be your boss in the company, and you'll be judged solely on your skills. I appreciate that, she answered. I expected nothing less. They kissed goodbye, and Danielle entered the building with the feeling that her life had just taken on a new dimension. Not only professional, but also personal. Over the following months, Danielle developed professionally and personally. At work, she quickly gained recognition not only from Thomas but also from other directors. Her analyses were valued, her ideas were listened to. Nobody whispered about protection behind her back anymore. She'd earned her place with hard work and talent. At the same time, her relationship with Miles deepened. They dated outside the company, got to know each other better, discovered common interests. Miles took her to his hometown, showed her the house he grew up in, introduced her to his mother. Danielle invited him to Boston to see her old life. He met Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Peterson. Their relationship at the company remained professional. Only closest collaborators like Caroline and Thomas knew about their relationship. For others, they were the boss and the employee, nothing more. In May, 6 months after arriving in New York, Danielle officially became permanently employed as a financial analyst. On the same day, Miles invited her to dinner at the same restaurant where they'd had their first date. I have a surprise for you, he said as they sat down for dessert. Remember my foundation? The one I mentioned? Of course, She nodded. It officially launches next month, he announced proudly. And I'd like you to become its director. Danielle looked at him surprised. Me? But why? Because you were once that kind of girl yourself. You know these problems from the inside, and you have a heart that understands how important such chances are. Danielle felt moved. This was a proposal that combined everything important to her. A job with meaning that went beyond making money, an opportunity to help others, professional development. I don't know what to say. Say yes to the foundation. Miles smiled, and he reached into his pocket and took out a small velvet box. Say yes to me. He opened the box, and Danielle saw it contained a ring with a delicate sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. Danielle Cooper, I know we've only known each other 6 months, but I'm sure you're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with. Will you do me this honor and be my wife? Danielle looked at him, feeling tears well up in her eyes. She thought about this extraordinary journey, from a poor student working 3 jobs to the woman facing an extraordinary future, about a chance meeting that turned out to be destiny, about the wallet that was a test and an opportunity. Yes, she replied without hesitating for a moment. Yes to the foundation, and yes to you. Miles slipped the ring on her finger and then kissed her tenderly. Anthony, who'd been watching them from the other end of the restaurant, raised his glass in a silent toast. Epilogue. 1 year later. A year later, the Second Chance Foundation, under the direction of Danielle Cooper Patterson, had already supported over 100 young people from all over America, with scholarships, internships, mentoring, everything she herself had needed when she was a poor student from Boston. During the opening of the foundation's new headquarters, a journalist asked her, Ms. Danielle, how did you come to occupy this position? How did you meet your husband? Danielle smiled, looking at Miles, who stood beside her. It's a long story, she replied. It started with a lost wallet. Miles embraced her with his arm and finished, and with the girl who passed the most important test, a test of honesty and courage to change your life. That evening when they returned to their home, a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, Danielle thought about how one seemingly small event can change everything, about how a decision made according to your own values can open doors you don't even know exist. On the sideboard in the living room, in a glass case, lay a framed wallet, the same one she'd found that evening in the bookstore. Miles had ordered it placed there as a symbol of their story. What are you thinking about? He asked, handing her a glass of wine. About how strange fate is, she replied with a smile, and about how fortune favors those who are willing to do the right thing. Miles looked at her with love. You know, that day when I saw you in the cafe, I thought I'd like to know your story, and I'm grateful every day that I get to be part of it. Danielle hugged him, feeling deep gratitude for everything that had happened, for the difficult beginnings that taught her perseverance, for the chance that showed up when she least expected it, and for the love that came bundled with that opportunity. This is the most beautiful story I could have dreamed of, she whispered. The end. If this story inspired you, remember, honesty is never wasted. Even when no one is watching, even when keeping what's not yours would be so easy, even when you're struggling and desperate, doing the right thing matters. The universe has a way of rewarding integrity in the most unexpected ways. Share this with someone who needs to know that their character is their greatest asset, that hard work and ethics will be noticed, and that sometimes the smallest decision, returning a wallet, staying honest, choosing integrity, can change the entire trajectory of your life. Subscribe if you believe in second chances, in the power of honesty, and in the magic that happens when you stay true to yourself, even when it costs you. Because sometimes a lost wallet isn't lost at all. It's destiny testing you, and your response will determine your future.